Hello, welcome in. Today I just want to talk about some of the books I've read recently. Let's start with some of the scary, spooky books I've been reading since we are getting into October now and it's on theme. So first of all, I read House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, which I was so looking forward to, and it was really good. This is about a young woman who has grown up and is living in poverty in an area that is very just entrenched in economic struggle. And our main character really wants to get out of that, and she ends up getting an offer to become a blood maiden, which means that she would move up north where things are more rich and luxurious, and she would be part of one of these old, rich, fancy, like nobility houses, and her job would be to provide blood to one of these rich noble people in exchange for room and board, very generous salary and pension, which basically you would do this for a few years and you'd be set for life. However, when she gets there, of course, things are not exactly what they seem. There's definitely something sinister going on, even more, like that's already sinister by itself, but there's clearly something even worse going on, and she starts digging into it. And it's this very tense, dangerous, gothic setting. I really loved it. I really just thought that the whole aesthetic and the vibes were so good, and the story kept me on my toes. I thought it was really interesting, and it meditated on a lot of these issues like class inequality and the kind of the vulnerability and the exploitation that comes along with that, which was just really interesting, and I really liked it. After that, I read Bittersweet in the Hollow, which is a Penguin Teen arc, so thank you Penguin Teen, and I absolutely loved this. It was so good. It's basically a kind of a murder mystery, but with a supernatural undertone to it. There's a lot of stuff with like folklore and cryptids. It's kind of a Mothman situation, so if you like Mothman, I think you would love this. Basically, it's set in this really small Appalachian town, and the main character and her sisters, their family has been in this town for generations, hundreds of years, and that's kind of the situation with everyone. Like, all of these families have been here and everyone knows everyone's family business. The main character's family has magic, so of course there's always been this tension where people are like, they're witches, they're practicing the dark arts or whatever, but then of course everyone's also still coming to them, and they also run the town's little restaurant and bakery, which is so cozy and so cute, and it's just the perfect vibes. I loved the setup so much. But then there's also this really cool, really intriguing murder mystery going on. I think it was last summer that the main character went missing in the woods. And when she was found, she had no memories. She has no idea what happened. And now she's just been having these weird nightmares and weird visions about it. This summer, another girl has gone missing in the woods in a very similar manner. They're obviously connected, except this girl ends up being found dead and they think she was murdered. Meanwhile, the small town is small town in the background. Another Penguin Teen arc that I read was Thin Air, which I also really loved, and I was so glad I did. It's a group of students who have been selected to compete for a scholarship, like this really prestigious scholarship. And they are on an airplane flying from America to Paris to the Scholarship Foundation to begin the competition. But things take an unexpected twist when, first of all, they find these weird notes referencing like really private personal secrets that each of them has that could pretty much not only eliminate them from the competition, but also like destroy their lives. And then one of them ends up murdered, and things just really kick off, and they're really good and really exciting. I was so invested the entire time, and I just loved this book so much. I also read Yellow Jessamine by Caitlin Starling, who wrote The Death of Jane Lawrence, and I really liked Jane Lawrence. I don't think I liked this one as much, but it was still really good. This one is also set in one of these like gloomy, eerie, gothic situations. The main character is this woman who is basically alone in the world. She's in perpetual mourning because her parents are both dead, and as their only heir, she inherited their fortune and their shipping company. So she's like basically a shipping magnate. There's also recently, with one of like the last rounds of ships that has come in, a sickness has started going around, some kind of plague that's just making people act very strangely. And the main character encounters some of these people that are acting so weird and realizes that they are fixated on her, which is obviously very scary for her. And on top of that, she's kind of under investigation by the authorities because there's clearly a connection here and they want to know why her ship brought this weird plague into the city, which is very nerve-wracking for her because she has her own secrets that do not need to be uncovered. So yeah, she really needs to figure out what is going on. And it was really interesting. It was really good. The vibes were immaculate once again. I think that I did have some trouble getting super invested, like emotionally invested into the storyline, but it was still a really enjoyable read. And again, just the vibes, the aesthetic, like A+ on all of that. Then after that, I read Catherine House, which I was kind of disappointed in. I feel like from the reviews I've seen, a lot of people either really loved it or were really disappointed by it, which makes sense. Basically, it is about this school, this really weird like experimental school, really like closed off. You can't have access with the outside world for the duration of your degree, and they're doing this weird like experimental program with something called plasmoid or something like that, which our main character is not studying. She's doing art history or something, so she has no idea what all of that's about. But as her time in the university goes on and some of her friends are in that program, it becomes clear that this plasma situation is something very weird and very ominous, and that maybe things aren't okay at this school. And I wish that that explanation didn't sound so vague and ambiguous, but that's honestly what the book is. And for me, that's why I didn't really like it. I wanted something more out of it, and I feel like maybe there is something more that other people got that I maybe didn't understand or didn't get. It's definitely possible that I wasn't paying close enough attention, you know, but the reading experience that I had just felt kind of pointless. But again, there could be more to the book that I just didn't, you know, soak into my small brain. So anyways, the next book that I read was Mr. Magic by Kirsten White. I really loved this. I thought it was so unique and interesting. The setup is that there used to be this TV show in like the 90s about a circle of children, like 6 kids or whatever, who all magically summon this man named Mr. Magic who does magic tricks with them and teaches them how to be good people, teaches them life lessons, right? But the weird thing about this show is that everybody remembers it like vividly. They remember very specific things that are the same things that other people remember. A lot of the book is basically Reddit threads of people on Reddit just discussing their memories of this TV show and how weird it is that there's no record of it anywhere, and like trying to find evidence that this TV show existed. There's no trace of it anywhere. It's like this weird Mandela effect situation, and I thought that was such a cool thing to explore in a horror story. But like, it's so good. It was so interesting. And one thing that I do want to mention about it that I really liked about it is that the undertones of this story are very much about religious trauma. In the author's note, she talks about it and she's like, yes, this book is a reflection of my experience being raised in the Mormon church and then subsequently leaving the Mormon church as she got older. I loved the way that she put all of that wrapped up in such a cool story that had such a unique vibe and plot, and everything was just really, really cool. And I loved this a lot. And then the last kind of scary book that I want to talk about is Just Like Home, which was recommended to me by Beauty Kim Cam. I'll leave her channel link down below. This was so weird and I loved it so much. It's a haunted house story, essentially. The main character has a very complicated relationship with both of her parents. As a child, she was definitely like a daddy's girl. She loved her father so much, but he ends up being convicted of being a serial killer and going to prison, and he dies in prison. And then her mother, she's just always not had a good relationship with. Her mother hates her, and the feeling is pretty mutual. Now her mother is basically on her deathbed. She's very ill. The end is near. So she has to go home and kind of say goodbye to her mother and deal with the house, if she's gonna sell it, if she needs to clean it up or whatever. And while she's there, the entity that used to like haunt her, that she was always afraid that there was a monster under her bed or in her closet, she starts feeling that again and kind of reliving her childhood experiences and memories about her dad and what her dad was up to and how much she knew or didn't know about who he was when she was a child, how that relationship like affected her relationship with her mother and the house itself, which again her father built for her and for her mother. So it's a very like personal situation, and it's kind of a character in itself. Yeah, it was just a really, really good book. Like, as a haunted house story, this is really so good, like top tier, everything that you could want. I loved it. I had a great time reading it. Anyways, I also listened to some audiobooks on Librofm, which is my favorite audiobook platform. I will leave it linked down below. If you use my link, it helps me out a lot. And you get to purchase audiobooks that help out local bookstores or independently owned bookstores instead of using Audible, which is just a win-win situation. Anyways, some of the audiobooks that I've listened to recently, first of all, The Honeymoon Crashers by Christina Lauren. This is kind of a sequel to The Unhoneymooners, which I loved. I think it's like the sister of one character and the brother of the other from the first book having a romance in this little one. And this was like a whole audio production. Like, there were sound effects, background music, and ambient sounds and stuff like that. Like, it was so good. It was so cool. I really, really enjoyed this experience. I also read the audiobook for Galatea? I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it's a Greek myth retelling. It's very short. I think it took me an hour or two to listen to while I was straightening my hair and getting ready for the day. And basically the main character is the woman in the myth who was a statue that a sculptor made and then brought to life to be his wife. So obviously there's a lot to be unpacked with that situation and like what it means to like exist as an object purely for someone else, but then she comes into her own person and starts having her own wants and needs, and they have a daughter. And I really, really enjoyed this and I loved it. Then I also listened to In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, which I have been looking forward to forever. It is basically a memoir about her experiences in an abusive relationship with one of her first ever serious girlfriends. And it's told in such an interesting way. Like, every chapter is told in the style of like different literary genres and tropes and stuff like that. So it's like this memory is told as a rom-com, and then this memory is told as a gothic horror, and then this memory is told as, I don't know, a high fantasy adventure, right? And I really appreciated that format because it really speaks to the truth that like there are so many different elements of different feelings in every single event that happens to us and every memory we have. And I think that using all of these different genres and tones and voices, like some are funny, some are sad, some are scary, it really conveys the complexity of that experience and the way that even when you're telling a true story, kind of impossible to tell that story without filtering it and interpreting it and making it into a story. You know what I mean? I loved this. Obviously, I thought that this was brilliant and genius and a masterpiece. And then the last audiobook that I've listened to recently was Rebel Folklore, which was really interesting. It's basically a bunch of little short chapters that each focus on a different figure in folklore or mythology from different cultures all around the world. Some of them were more well-known ones that you kind of hear about a lot, but then most of them, I would say like 98% of them, I had never heard of before. It was really interesting to see that even though I'd never heard of them before, it was so cool to see the little pieces of it that have kind of made their way into mainstream just knowledge and storytelling. And like you see this trope all the time in this type of story, and actually it has its origins in this mythology from this culture. And I thought that that was really, really neat. All right, then two last little things that I want to talk about that I read. First of all, This One Summer, which is a graphic novel. I read this for the Magical Readathon and it was actually way better than I thought it was gonna be. It is about a little girl who every summer her family goes to their like vacation beach situation in a different city, and there every summer she has a best friend whose family is also on their vacation, right? And this graphic novel kind of follows the one summer that they have where it becomes clear that they're kind of growing up, and maybe they're growing up at different paces from each other. One of them is starting to get interested in romance, and then the other one is like, I just want to go swim and play dolphins in the ocean, like what is going on? And I think that this graphic novel did such a good job of portraying like the trauma of that actually. Like, it's a really fucked up experience actually. Like, it's scary, it's horrifying, and I think that this really captured that, like just how hard that is actually. But it is also a heartwarming and fun story as well, and I really liked it. I thought it was good. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is Percy Jackson. I read the first two Percy Jackson books for the first time in my life. I've never read them. I don't know why. Never read them as a kid, and recently found out that Clara from Unclarable has also never read them. So we buddy read the first two books together, and we're probably going to continue the series at some point. But this was just so fun. We both agreed that like if we had read these as kids, this would have been our entire personality. Like this would have been it for us forever. If you don't know Percy Jackson, it's like children's books, but they're based on Greek mythology and all of these kids that are like the children of gods and stuff like that. It was really funny, even to me as an adult. And I know that if I had read this at 13, this would have been top tier comedy, like prestige, hilarious. The characters are really, really lovable. One character that got introduced in the second book, who's like a cyclops, is my favorite. I would die for him. And the adventures that they're going on are like really engaging and high stakes, and I love them, while also they're really funny. So if you also missed out on Percy Jackson and are now way too old to be reading Percy Jackson for the first time, consider this permission to do that, and actually me encouraging you to do that anyway. So yeah, anyway, I think those are all of the books that I read recently that I wanted to talk about. Thank you so much for hanging out. Let me know in the comments what you have been reading lately, or if you have read any of these books, what you thought of them. I would love to chit chat and talk to you. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Thanks for hanging out, and I hope that I get to talk to you soon. Bye!